Hey, what is up? My name is Rubidium. Today we are talking about big lights. If you've ever been on a film set, you've seen these absolute monster things that run off specialized generators or different types of power, the 10Ks, the 20Ks, higher, that just seem so excessive, that just seem so over the top. You wonder, what are they being used for? You know, when I started my filmmaking career, it was very DIY. It was very, what I had lying around the house, or what cost less than $100. And then when I started directing TV commercials and the DOPs and the gaffers started rolling out these giant lights, I didn't understand why. And it took me a long time to get a handle on the mathematics of light and to understand when a big light is used and what it can be used for. This whole discussion will be somewhat academic because for most of us, big 20K, 10K RE tungsten lights that cost, $500 and $600 a day to rent out of our price range and just not the kind of thing we're going to be using in our productions. But if there's one thing I saw at NAB, it was that there's a lot of affordable, powerful LED Fresnel lights that are now available that are the same power as a 2K and above. So you can combine multiple versions of them, small enough to plug into house power, to plug multiple units into house power and use on the productions. And they started off very expensive. They're starting to come down. There's the Aperture 300D that I've tried and I'm not a huge fan of for reasons I'll talk later. The one I got hold of is this unit, the Lupo Dayled 2000. It's made in Italy. It is big. It is very bright. It's not that expensive. It has everything internal into the unit itself. There's no external ballast. It plugs into the wall. It's dimmable from 0 to 100. It can be controlled by DMX, and it's only $1,800 retail. I say only, that's a very expensive light. It also comes in a Dayled 650 variant, which is half the price, just under $1,000. But these let you put a hell of a lot of light where you need it. And where do you need this much light? I'm going to talk about that in a second. How bright is this thing? Well, at 1 meter, at 180 degrees shutter, at ISO 800, I'm metering it at f45.6, which I didn't know that the light meter went this high. That's with it Fresneled all the way to a tight spot. But it's an incredible amount of light. So we finally now have an equivalent to the RE2K in terms of output, except that this is daylight, not tungsten. It can run off a battery for an hour and a half. It doesn't get hot, and you can plug multiple units into the one system of house power without getting any problems. But the question remains, why would you want such a bright light? What do you do with it? The reason that big, powerful, bright lights like this are useful in filmmaking is because cinematic lighting is usually about size. You want the biggest source you can, as close as you can to the subject. But often you can't get your source very close to the subject because the actor or the subject needs to move around the space, needs to move around the set. So you need to get a bigger source further away that's brighter. This comes into play when you're dealing with existing daylight. So you're using an outdoor space that you're then adding light to, or it can be a large space that you want to use your inverse square law and have a distant large source that people can move around the space and not change exposure as they move. The way you do this is use diffusion. You use 4 foot by 4 foot frames, or you use, usually inside houses, or outside you can use 6 by 6 foot, 8 by 8, 12 by 12. They go all the way up to 80 by 80. When you build these big diffusion panels, you need to light them. And because the diffusion takes away so much of the light, you need to start with the brightest source possible. So here we are in my backyard. I have a tree overhead that's kind of cutting off down the top light, and I sort of have an ambient light coming in from the sky. It's maybe, 20 minutes before sunset, so the actual level is pretty low. But as you can see, it's pretty decent. I'm properly illuminated, and it's a clear, if not particularly cinematic shot. Now what I'm going to do is turn the exposure on the camera down. What is now the key light, I'm going to use it as the ambient light, and I'm going to add a really powerful LED light coming through a 6x6 as my new key, and you're going to see how that changes the shape of the light. So now we have the Lupo punching through the 6x6 half grid, and you can see I still have ambient around me, but me as the subject is so much brighter, and it's directional. It's coming from the side, it's giving me this nice shape, it's making me stand out from the background. It's also big enough that because of the inverse square law, I'm not necessarily too much darker here than I am brighter here closer to the source. So lighting with powerful lights diffused through big soft sources gives the talent or your subject room to move around and still be sufficiently lit. Notice too how I am a couple of stops brighter now than my background from when before I was using just ambient. Me in the background with the same exposure, and there was no separation there. That's an outdoor example. A far more common one is, like I said, putting diffusion on windows and using units like this or multiple units like this to punch through that diffusion to light the whole diffusion on the window up and use the diffusion inside as a source, just like it would be the sun. The reason that you can't use the sun consistently making a film is that the sun changes direction, it comes in and out, clouds go away and come back. So you need a dependable light source that's strong enough to take you through a whole day or night of filmmaking and still give you a consistent exposure. I am certainly not an expert on this. I'm someone that's kind of discovering these tricks as I go. There are plenty of people out there that know a lot more about this than I do. There are a heap of really strong, punchy lights at NAB this year. The Lupos are definitely worth checking out because they're self-contained. They're really high quality, and they're Italian instead of Chinese made. They have a really high CRI, and they're very, like I showed, they're very bright. I'm going to follow this up with another video where I use multiple sources of bright light to diffuse one piece of diffusion, one silk, and show how you can combine multiple sources to get an even brighter diffused fill for a daylight interior. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.